Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, alayhi afdalus salah wa man wala amma ba'd. So we completed hadith number 6. We started hadith number 7. We did start hadith number 7. Ad-Dinun Nasiha, yeah. So we mentioned last week that this particular hadith, which is, as you see here, hadith number 7, the famous hadith of Ruqayyah Tamim ibn Awsin ad-Dari, radiyallahu an. Now, this particular hadith, this is the only one like it, but it's one of the most important and famous hadith in Islam, in the entire religion. However, the popularity of this hadith is not necessarily positive across the board. Unfortunately, it is also one of the most misunderstood hadith as well. It's misinterpreted, it's misused, and therefore it also is amongst a collection of other hadith that are amongst the abused hadith of Islam. Now, why do I say that? First thing is to understand this term nasiha. We mentioned last week what nasiha is. We mentioned that nasiha comes from the word nun sad ha, nasaha. And nasaha means that two things that were originally together for whatever reason broke apart. Well, let's just talk about what breaks apart something, right? Usually it's something that is foreign, something that shouldn't be there or shouldn't happen, and as a result of it, it happened. Give me an example in the Islamic context what that could be. So you are a believer and something happens or you experience something where it causes you now or it compromises a part of your deen, a part of your faith in some way, shape or form. Give me an example of what that could be. Where now that you've experienced what this test was or what this thing was, it's caused you now to lose a part of your faith. So what part of that faith are we talking? It could be anything. You were really punctual in prayer. And then, you were tested in a sense that, I don't know, you got a new job, your shift timings change, you got more assignments to do, your schedule is all over the place. And as a result now, the struggle to maintain that kind of punctuality with prayer becomes that much more difficult. How does this word nasiha apply to your situation then? What has happened here? You've gone from being punctual to losing that punctuality, right? Punctuality in salah, think of it as just one unit. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, all complete one circle. And the fact now is that you're losing punctuality of the salah. So now it's no longer a clean circle. Now you have one part of this circle that's missing. There's a gap. So perhaps maybe Fajr, there's nothing there connecting you to Dhuhr or from Isha. It's blank. And then, okay, fine. Then you pray your Fajr and then you pray your Dhuhr on time, you pray your Asr on time, you pray your Maghrib on time. But then Isha got busy. So then there's another gap. No longer is this a circumference. No longer is this a complete circle. Nasiha is to try to fill those gaps and make it a complete circle all over again. That's what nasiha is. So what you take from this is the following. Number one, immediately right off the bat, nasiha is not restricted to telling others what to do. Ya akhi, you need to grow your beard. You need to pray here. You need to dress like this. You need to act this way. What you're doing is wrong. This is the way it should be. And constantly commanding and telling everybody what they should or should not do. That is, however, one type of nasiha. So we're not going to exclude it just because that's the thing that most people do. It is one type of nasiha. Just a quick side point here, or a question I should say. Why has nasiha become the term used for others to validate themselves, that they can tell you and advise you at any time, at anywhere, at anyhow? Why did this term have this sort of discipline or practice amongst the Muslims that it was constantly attributed to this term? Ya akhi, I'm just trying to give you nasiha. I know you're angry, but it's just nasiha, okay? Relax. I know you're sad. I know you're upset. I know you want to fight me, but I'm just giving you a nasiha. Your lecture really stunk. and I would never listen to you again. But that's just nasiha for you, you know? Your recitation sounded like you were reciting in French, but that's just nasiha from me to you. Why did that happen? Yeah.
It's interesting that you're asking that because over here, when I read the English translation, it says religion is sincerity. But before I read this translation, when I hear the word nasiha,
Uh-huh.
in my head, I don't hear sincerity. That never came.
Yeah.
I always thought nasiha is advice. So, so is it like sincerity or is it advice or is it both?
Put it this way, no nasiha can be counted as and fulfill its meaning of nasiha without sincerity. It must have sincerity attached to it, which leads us to the second point. But before we get to a second point, why do have people use this term and validated their ability and their willingness to just go around and tell everybody what to do and how wrong they are in the name of nasiha? Unfortunately, over time, nobody really knows exactly when all of this began, where people started to abuse the term and use it in their own way. It's just one of those things in the religion. We have hundreds of things like this that are misinterpreted, that are used to validate bad behavior or bad attitudes or other issues as well. And as a result, a beautiful term now takes an awful meaning or a meaning that's been tainted in some way. So another example of that is like jihad. You remember, I mean, it's still probably to some extent a word that when you hear it, first of all, some Muslims get scared even saying the word, even talking about it. But obviously, it's a term that's been abused all throughout the world. But actually, we know that jihad in and of itself is a very beautiful term, right? Which really addresses a struggle. And sometimes that struggle could be outwardly, but the 99% of the time, that struggle is what? It's inwardly. It's a struggle from within to just stay sincere, to stay focused. You know, so one beautiful term used for something else. Nasiha, same thing. So my point here is this. Anytime you try to bring or help someone become better, that's nasiha. Whether it means helping them, advising them, teaching them, supporting them, guiding them, whatever the case is, just being in their life alone is a type of nasiha. Just to be there. You know I don't get to talk to you as much, but it's so reassuring to know that you're always there. That's nasiha. Why? Because your presence now helps to keep this individual and others from maintaining stability when it comes to the deen. The second point here is linguistically, nasiha can be used for religious matters as well as worldly matters. But Shar'i wise, so the Islamic definition is that it's only used for Shar'i or Islamic or anything related to religion, related to the deen, that as a result of it brings you closer to Allah. So the Islamic definition, an-nasiha, is always used for religious affairs and not necessarily worldly affairs. However, you can also use the same term in worldly affairs. Can somebody tell me how? So it's one thing when I say to you, Ya akhi, do you know that Maghrib has already passed? You need to pray Maghrib. Yeah, I've been really struggling with it. Well, guess what? This is what I'll do for you. I'll text you every day just to remind you. So once you get back on track, then I'll stop. Okay, cool. That'll be great. Apply that same approach to something worldly. Anything.
How about advising someone in the prospectus of a spouse?
Okay, so you're advising somebody about, somebody perhaps that they may be interested in, and you know a little bit more about that individual, so you try to just give them advice and say, hey, listen, man, they said that they were Muslim, but he's worshiping something totally different that I've seen, whatever the case is, right? Anything else?
Your alarm clock?
Your alarm clock? Just texting somebody, hey, Assalamu alaikum, I haven't heard from you for a while. What's going on? Just, last night, sister, on another program, just said, she's like, I'm constantly feeling alone and depressed and down, and now I'm on medication. I'm on antidepressants and all of these different things. Why? And then once we talked and eventually boiled down to that there was just nobody there to reach out to talk to or to even support. Parents are not around, not married, literally by themselves. And, I said to her, look, if I was in your situation, I know that a lot of people may have advised you just pray and talk to Allah and this and that. You continue to do that. But there's a practical side as well. You're a human being. You need to be around people. You need to have some kind of social life and some kind of friendship with other good people around you. So you could just talk. You could just know you're not alone. And subhanAllah, she's struggled for a long, long time. And it's the first time somebody really just broke her out of I'm making dua, I'm trying, I'm doing all of these things. I went for Umrah, I'm fasting, I'm reading Quran, but I can't get it yet. I can't get myself out of this. And that's because the nasiha that came was only reflecting religious Islamic rituals. But then the worldly side, the human in all of us, that's important too. Yeah, that's important too. When you're not praying, what are you doing? Like you need to have a good environment and good people around you just for the sake of having people in your life. That's all under nasiha. Next point. Take a look at this hadith now, what happened. So now you understand at least what nasiha is. And it's translated here as good advice. Now you understand that advice is more than just telling others what to do. It's much more comprehensive than that. The people said, who are these people, by the way? قُلْنَا لِمَنْ. We all said, so that's right here. قُلْنَا لِمَنْ. So we all then said, to whom? So clearly the Prophet ﷺ is, or this particular companion is narrating this narration in front of more than two individuals. When we say قُلْنَا, it's plural, referring to that there is more than not one. Two would be something else. This is two and more, always. So this individual, this particular companion, is with a group of people. And they're all probably discussing and talking about this, and then they eventually narrate it. When asked, who is this nasiha for? Here's what happens. This I find really interesting because take a look at what happens now. Nasiha is for Allah. How? How is nasiha for Allah?
Bring them back to the path of Allah.
Yes, that's really important. You know how many people misinterpret this statement? Because when you read it at first glance, it looks like, how am I giving nasiha to Allah? No. Nasiha is first and foremost for Allah. In Arabic, when it says lillah, meaning everything that you're doing eventually has to lead you to Allah and get closer to Allah. So to Allah is not directly Allah and talking to Allah and giving Him nasiha. We can't do that, right? But every act of nasiha, the goal behind it is to get that individual or even yourself to Allah and get closer to Him. When we say to Allah, get closer to Him. The Imam or the brother that who led Salat al-Isha, the last verse in Surah Shura, what is it? أَلَا إِلَى اللَّهِ تَصِيرُ الْأُمُورِ. It says that by no means, ilallah, it is to Allah that all of our affairs will eventually come back to Him. But if you look at the ayah at first glance, all is to Allah. All of our affairs to Allah. At first glance, you're just like, what does that even mean? But to Allah, يعني, in other words, for Allah. So the first thing to take here when it comes to this first part of the response to this question, قُلْنَا لِمَنْ, to whom? When we say to Allah, meaning every single time you hear nasiha or give nasiha, this is the goal. This is the reason why. right? It's not to just show off your Islamic skills or your knowledge or be able to quote this and quote that. We really, and obviously when I say we as a culture, we really twisted this hadith in such a way that it's lost a lot of its beauty. You know, it's lost a lot of its perfume, its scent, its beautiness, its sweetness. So every single time you're trying to help somebody, it's always first and foremost, I'm just doing it because I want you to go to Allah and get closer to Him too. So I'm doing it for myself, that I get closer to Him, that I keep moving towards Him, but I also want you to move towards Him as well. And to His book. Obviously, which book are we talking about? The Quran, right? وَلِكِتَابِهِ. And that should be, you know, self-explanatory, right? And to His messenger. How to His messenger? What does that mean? His sunnah. To practice, to develop love for Him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And to the leaders of the Muslims. Yeah, what does that even mean? To the leaders of the Muslims. What is this in reference to? What's that? So this is what I wanted to hear, because that is not what it's referring to. But this is what I wanted to come out. To the leaders of the Muslims, it's referring to the scholars, imams, and shuyukhs and ulama. Okay? This is whom it's referring to. So when we say, وَلِأَئِمَّةِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, the imams of the Muslims, here, it's not referring to any leader, because there are some pretty awful Muslim leaders out there. You agree? Oh yeah, there are a lot. So this was a general command that when you give nasiha, it should also be to these leaders. Sure, that works on the one hand. But when it comes to our scholars, you're not going to necessarily give them advice, but you're going to practice nasiha in order that you develop the closest lifestyle to the inheritors of the prophets, our scholars. Our goal, we will never be like a prophet, right? No woman will ever be like Maryam alayhi salam. However, when you see these great men and women, ulama and leaders and imams and scholars that we have, that is the next best thing after prophets and messengers. So you also want that your nasiha, so here's how this should sound. You tell somebody, hey, listen, you know, you can actually, if you don't pray like Isha on time exactly, just remember you have a few hours halfway towards Fajr. That's the cutoff point. So don't be so hard on yourself. And as a matter of fact, if you read this book by Shaykh al-Albani, Sifatu Salat al-Nabi, the Prophet's Prayer Described, it'll explain a whole bunch more. And the person asks, well, who's this Albani person? Oh, Shaykh al-Albani is so-and-so, one of great scholars of Hadith, etc., wrote hundreds of books, specializes in this area and that area. Great person. So you see what you're doing? You're bringing them to whom? You're bringing them to the leaders of the ummah. So it's just through conversation. It doesn't necessarily like literally has to be towards a scholar. No. And I'll tell you why all of this happens, by the way. And to the common folk of Muslims. So, wali وَعَامَّتِهِمْ عَامَّتِهِمْ عَامٌ عَامَّةُ nas, we say in Arabic. عَامَّةُ nas, meaning, just the general people. So your nasiha should also be for everyone at the end of the day. What does that mean? It means that when you're having these kinds of conversations under nasiha, it should look like it should have like two pictures. It should appear like two things. Number one, you're either telling one person, and this nasiha is only for them because it's a specific situation, or number two, it's for them, but others can also benefit from the same advice. Okay? And that's ammatihim. So another, I guess you could say, extension to the goal of trying to bring others and yourself closer to Allah, closer to the Quran, closer to the Prophet, closer to the scholars, is that your advice should try to be worded and presented in such a way that even if it doesn't apply to others, when they hear it, they still benefit from the reminder. Everybody understand? Now that you've heard what this hadith means, go back to how the hadith began. And what we said, what did Muslims do with this hadith? And look what the aim and the goal behind it is. So it was used as a shield to cover up bad habits for Muslims who enjoy being that haram police, or that, nasiha soldier or warrior, and just go around, what are these people doing? This is haram. Paint on the wall is no good. It's distracting. Why are you doing this? Who did a kafir make this carpet? Like all of these things. I'm just giving you guys nasiha. So now it pulls you out of that and say, listen, man, at the end of the day, what you're saying doesn't achieve any of this. I don't feel that I can come closer to Allah after listening to you. I feel like I want to just fight you. I'm angry now. Let me ask you a question. Tell me how you all would give nasiha. Let's say you see somebody doing something that's un-Islamic. How do you approach them?
Privately.
So if there are people around, do you just go right up to them, or do you wait till they're alone? What do you do?
Yeah, wait until they're alone.
Okay, so you wait till they're alone. Okay.
I would first, do I know this person? Do we have a relationship already?
Both.
Like that, no. So I would first examine it like that. Like if
Uh-huh.
if I want to give them nasiha, I won't just go up to them. Maybe build some type of relationship. Even it's oh hey, how are you? I'm Majra, whatever, and then you go on.
So you try to sort of break the ice, just talk to them, hey, hello. So, okay, brothers, let's say you walk into the prayer hall and you see a brother who came into IAT for the first time and came to just pray. He came a little early though, and he's sitting against the wall at the sister section. He doesn't know, so he's just oh, nice big gym. So he's oh, there's a quiet area at the back there, let me go sit there. And then the adhan goes up, and sisters are walking in. He's still chilling, he's not moving. He's so involved in his dua, in his recitation, and so on. Doesn't see a big deal. And then it starts happening. Sisters walk in. A'udhu billah. Brother, move. And he's not getting it. He probably thinks maybe the sisters go on the other side or something, right? It's his first time. Let's just assume any reasoning why he's still there, right? What do? Do you, from the brothers section, yell about, brother, fear Allah, get over here? In front of the whole musalla, the whole jama'ah? Or sisters, do you just give it to him and be listen, are you the Dajjal? I don't know. What are you doing here? How do you do this?
Quietly going up to, I think most people are receptive to anything depending on how you deliver it to them. So quietly going up to him, shaking his hand, and letting him know that he's sitting in the wrong spot.
Okay. Quietly going up to him. And, I'm totally with that. But we both know that not a lot of people have the patience to take that approach. So is it okay to be brother, come, please. That's a sister. You're not a sister. Come. Let me give you another example you all see. You know those volunteers every Ramadan, I don't know if they're policemen. They're more of boot camp experts where, they'll be pretty cool if you're cool, if everybody's coming in the flow, but the moment somebody messes up that flow, brother, what's wrong? Sister, what is wrong with you? Is your ears working? SubhanAllah, I know you're fasting, but they should, come on, what are you doing? Why are you sitting over there? Get over here. Wallahi, let me tell you something, right? As much as we appreciate our volunteers, there has to be a little bit of basic adab training when you're talking to the community. Just because you're in charge of traffic control, meaning people in and out or in the parking lot, does not give you, and I've seen this, I've watched this. Every time I go for khutbah, I come to a masjid 45 minutes to an hour early, and I sit in the car and I just start doing my own thing, right? But then I can't help of the, episode 1 on a Netflix series of Muslims battling in the parking lot, right? Season 1. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to like get things, my head clear. And I'm like, oh my God, the volunteer just took that pine cone thingy and threw it on the other brother's car to tell him, don't stop there, like keep moving. I've watched this stuff with my own eyes. And the point here at the end of the day, the golden rule of thumb with nasiha is akhlaq. Okay? Choose however you want to address somebody. There's a big difference if you see somebody sitting where they shouldn't be like, brother, what are you doing? As opposed to, salam alaikum. You're not even saying nothing, but come, brother. Quickly. And then when they come, salam alaikum. Listen, that was the sister section, okay? Yeah. You see the difference? So, all boils down to this one golden rule, okay? Let's continue. Any advice for people who, before they give nasiha, you said, take whatever approach, good akhlaq, whether private, whether in front of others, but just be smart, be wise, be respectful, etc. Any other advice you can offer before we start next hadith? Yeah. Our job is never to change people and get the result. That's not our job. Our job is just to tabligh. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. It's not upon us except that we just give the message, relay the message as much as we can. The result of that's not our territory. Okay? Yeah.
And that also kind of goes hand in hand with your sincerity. Like if you're actually sincere, you won't really care about the result if you're actually doing it for the sake of Allah.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I also say the way you laid it out, can I also say sometimes, in particular cases, not saying anything, just being present there, even not saying anything could be an impact.
Yeah, I mean, the ways to approach correcting a situation or bettering a situation are, numerous. So sometimes just silence in and of itself is great nasiha. Just like the Prophet ﷺ, what did he do when he saw the man urinating in the masjid? When the companions saw him, what did they want to do? They wanted to have his head. But when the Prophet ﷺ saw it, what did he do? He just stayed quiet, and his concern wasn't necessarily this man. His concern was, listen, guys, relax. Just let him finish, okay? And literally silence. When he did his business, then he pulled him aside and talked to him, right? Okay, next hadith. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu. So here is another hadith that is an Islamophobe's, dinner on a plate that they could use and abuse and really taint the religion. And it starts off with the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam قال, after me, أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله ويقيم الصلاة ويؤت الزكاة. Okay, let's pause. So, I have been ordered. The Prophet ﷺ says, I have been ordered. So here's just a brief overview of the hadith, right? And this hadith, its central theme is what you see in front of you, the sanctity of a Muslim. This hadith is often misunderstood, but scholars explain that it refers to those who were openly attacking Muslims, threatening families, and spreading bloodshed in order to stop the spread of Islam. And of course, it is not what Islamophobes use it for. It is not a command to forcibly convert all people. Okay, so one of the, I guess you could say, tools or ammunition that Islamophobes use with this particular hadith is particularly in the opening sentence. I was ordered an uqatil. You see this word qatil, qatala. Have you heard this word before? Oh, yes. It's got several layers of meanings, just like pretty much every Arabic word, right? Qatala can mean to kill. Qatala also means to struggle. Qatala also means to struggle and defend. Qatala can simply just mean or make reference to something that's difficult and overwhelming. You know how you would work so hard on a project or several hours and be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm dead. That kind of usage, right? So you're struggling to the point where you feel like you're dying, but you're not. But it's a term or a phrase to describe your state at that particular. You've gone above and beyond the level of exhaustion that you're normally accustomed to. So that's the first point. With respect to this hadith, why, you tell me, and all of you I am sure know the answer to this, why is it that this hadith can never ever mean to forcibly to forcibly bring others to Islam and force them to accept their religion, and if not, their life is going to be at risk? Why is that interpretation never ever possible for a hadith like this, or any for that matter? Yeah. Okay, there's no compulsion in the deen. Forget about even ayat. Just use common sense for a moment. Okay?
He's offering protection in the same hadith. So it's a contradiction of killing.
Okay. So if this was to fight and kill and so on and force others, then later on, and if they do so, they will have gained protection from me and for their lives and for their property. Like, you wouldn't do that, but then keep in mind, the protection is for those who have accepted the call. So if they don't accept the call, does that mean, okay, go ahead, do what you got to do? Why is it, forget it, don't quote me any ayah or any, just use common sense, that this hadith can never ever mean anything remotely close to violence or compulsion? Yeah. Okay, okay. So we don't judge anybody. What if the person doesn't say it at all, though? Like, listen, I respect you guys, but I don't even want to say this shahada thing. Then can we be like, well, your intention doesn't matter this time. Come here. No. Guys, you all know the answer. Think about the Prophet ﷺ. Just think of him for a moment. Now answer me. He's a mercy to all of mankind. Okay? Be more, narrow it down, be more specific. Would the Prophet well, let me ask, let me paint another image. There is a da'if narration, okay? This is a weak narration, but the meaning behind, or the goal that it's trying to achieve, is authentic, okay? There's a weak narration of the Prophet ﷺ that one day a little kitten came, he took off his upper garment and he put it on the floor, and a little kitten came by and snugged its way into the garment and fell asleep. Prophet ﷺ then wants the garment, but he sees that the kitten is there. So he orders for his sword to be given to him. And it's not what you think, okay? He's not gonna Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, no, right? It's a little kitten. Instead, he takes his knife or his sword and he cuts the garment, and so as to not disturb the kitten from its sleep, and then lifts the garment and then patches it himself with another piece. This is a weak narration. But would the Prophet ﷺ, is it from his character to be that merciful even with animals? Could you see him doing that? 100%. So you see what I'm saying? It's a weak narration, but the goal that it's trying to achieve, it's authentic. Now apply that. Would a man who does that for a kitten, for a random stray animal, now you have a hadith that if you don't understand, it sounds pretty intimidating right from the get-go. Can this be from him, alayhi salatu wasalam? No. I'll even give you another example so it's really clear, because if it hasn't happened to you already, it will. This conversation will come up to you if you have conversation, especially with non-Muslims. they will bring this hadith up. It is that common. Okay, I've had to deal with it for ages, right? And I'll give you another example so at least you have a couple of, images in your mind that you can go to. One time the Prophet ﷺ, a father had married off his daughter. His daughter complained to her father that my husband is not good to me, right? He verbally abuses me, amongst other things, and this is how he's treating me. Father got upset, and he took his daughter, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ, and he complained to him. And he says that this is my daughter. وَفَرَشْتُهَا, I gave her like the beautiful, in other words, I gave her the royal treatment. That's the royal upbringing I gave her. In other words, this is my daughter, and I gave her every single thing in the world. And now when she got married, she's married to somebody who is treating her and abusing her and so on, and I don't like this. Ya Rasul, advise me what to do. You know what the Prophet ﷺ did? This is one of the rarest moments ever. As a matter of fact, I don't know of a single other hadith similar to this. You know what? He says, okay, let's go to the house of your husband and break the marriage. He didn't say, let's go and talk to him and find out what's his problem and counsel him, give him. No. He said, let's go break the marriage. Done. And as he wants to do this, as he preps himself to go, Jibreel alayhi salam comes and he receives guidance from Allah that Allah has ordered him not to do that. But first, this is now where you start going through step by step. Ask her if she is able to be patient and counsel through this problem. Not be patient and tolerate the abuse, because there is no such thing as patience with abuse in Islam. So anybody who tells you, listen, just be patient, it's only one black eye, like just relax. What you say to that person is, like, just get away from it. That is not Islam. Islam never ever abuse and patience in the same sentence, okay? So eventually Prophet ﷺ was saying, listen what he says. He looks at the father and he says, I wanted one thing, which is to break this relationship, but Allah wanted something else. And what Allah wants is better. So Allah wants for the Prophet ﷺ to step-by-step counsel through this problem. Not tell her that she must stay, be patient, wassalamu alaikum. No. So keep all of this in mind, that his initial reaction, without even thinking, was, oh, there's abuse? Done. And we all know, especially all of us who are married, that, it is challenging. It is extremely challenging, right? Two human beings from two separate backgrounds of two separate families now have to come together and be one. That is a lifelong challenge. Marriage just doesn't work out because you're married. Marriage works out because the two persons are working with each other to make it work out. Right? It doesn't naturally start like just, oh my God, marriage is just like cloud nine. No. You have to maintain, there's a maintenance for life when it comes to that relationship, right? So that's the goal behind that situation. And Prophet ﷺ was like, okay, let's see if we can work through this first, okay? I have been ordered, so now you understand what this means. So there's a couple of things here. This hadith clearly states that once an individual, so the one who does choose to accept the religion, look at the rest of the hadith, and if they do so can somebody tell me why is it that it mentions the shahada first? That's pretty obvious, that makes sense. Then it mentions salah, that makes sense. Then it mentions zakat, that makes sense. So what happened to Ramadan and Hajj? What happened to Ramadan and Hajj? I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this. Oh, it was revealed. Yeah, it was revealed. Why didn't Prophet ﷺ mention the other two pillars? Because it seems like he was mentioning the pillars, yeah.
Maybe because the salah and the zakat are things that you see that the person being open. Like you see the person praying to the person, you can physically see their zakat.
Okay.
But the fasting, they could be fasting in daylight, but they're eating hidden, and you don't know when in their entire life they're doing Hajj. So it's
Okay.
hiding.
Okay, so these are the acts of worship that can be illustrated and others can see it. So at least that they don't have to constantly affirm their Islam, that people can see, look, he's praying, he's paying zakat, he's a Muslim. Okay, anything else? Yeah, those are for Allah. But we know when you see somebody pray, we're like, oh, that's a Muslim praying. And of course, they're doing that for Allah. So this is one interpretation, and it's a valid one, okay? That these are the acts of worship that others can see being done. I can't see you fasting. And unless I'm at Hajj with you, I can't see you performing Hajj either, right? So leave those separate. Just because, here's the point, just because they're not mentioned here does not mean they were intentionally ignored or excluded, okay? So the point, so I just wanted that to be very clear. So the Prophet ﷺ is just focusing on these for now, perhaps. Maybe later on, once they come into the religion and they develop all of this. And besides, remember that Ramadan is only once a year. So it not being part of the initial conversation is okay. Like that's something, okay, once they're settled down in Salah and Zakat and all of the other things, then you'd be like, listen, you know, in 6 months, it's going to be Ramadan. Here's what that's about. You know, I've over the years talked to non-Muslims who ask a question all the time. And even till now, every single Ramadan, you'll get this question or you'll hear about it. How in the world do you fast for 30 days every single day? You can't have water even? No, can't have water. Not even just like a sip? No. Oh my God, I would die if I had to do that. It's intimidating, especially for somebody who's never done it. Every single day. I remember once upon a time when it was in the summer, fasting was like 35 hours a day. Like it was like 16, 17 hours. I think at one point the peak was like 17 hours almost. Poor brothers and sisters in Finland, it was like 22 and a half hours. Yeah. And then, you know, they had to get a special fatwa and so on of, because if they stuck to 22 hours, they would only have, you know, about 2 hours or even less to have their iftar, pray tarawih, have suhoor, and start it all over again. And that you will literally collapse. Like it's just, you can't maintain that, right? So, فَإِذَا فَعَلُوا ذَلِكَ, so if they do that, عَصَمُوا مِنِّي, then they get protection with me. دِمَاؤُهُمْ وَأَمْوَالُهُمْ إِلَّا بِحَقِّ الْإِسْلَامِ. So, it says here that the protection that they would have gained for their lives and their property. So two things are highlighted here. For their lives and their property. But let me see here. Okay, those are just basic points. We'll come to that at the end. For their lives and their property. So remember, now these newcomers to Islam, right? This is a time where Islam has not completely established itself. And even if it did, if it seemed like it was a prominent movement or a prominent community, it wasn't an official community where it had its own government and it had its own system and everything was formalized. It hadn't reached there yet. So that is why the Prophet ﷺ says, look, at least if you become Muslim, okay, if you make that choice and you do that, I will personally ensure that you will get this protection. We don't have a system yet that it's automatic, but they will have gained protection. Look where it says, from who? From the Prophet ﷺ, meaning like he will personally assure that this would be the case, because obviously in times of instability and war and that sort of thing, these are the two things that are unfortunately subject to loss: money and lives, right? Property, land, wealth, gold, silver, and the lives. You know, exterminate this group so we can take that section of the land. And exactly what we heard, we see in today's context, right? إِلَّا بِحَقِّ الْإِسْلَامِ. And then it says, unless they commit acts that are punishable in accordance to Islam. So that is a separate conversation, because that's an entire fiqh of punishment in Islam and how that's done, right? So basically what the Prophet ﷺ is saying here is that, look, if you do something severe, it could potentially compromise the protection that you're getting from me. So in other words, like if you steal from somebody else, or you demolish somebody else's home, or you take the life of somebody else, right? I may enforce capital punishment on you, or you may have to pay back blood money for X amount of time, and you don't have anything, so you may have to forfeit your house, you may have to forfeit your land. A number of things could happen, right? So that is why this statement is there, that once Islam has, and those punishments have been formalized, and all of the rulings and the scenarios and the fiqh behind it has been established, then you need to be cognizant about that, okay? In accordance to Islam, not in accordance to people or a culture or a background where you come from. That's not how punishment is going to work. It's going to work in accordance to what the book says, right? And their reckoning will be with Allah the Almighty. So it says here, وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَيَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْحِسَابِ, right? Hisab literally means to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Just counting one number, that's hisab. Uhasibuhum, I'm going to count every single one of them. Not I'll be like, oh, in this class, roughly 10, 15 of you. Okay, that's good enough. No. 1, 2, and just go down the line, right? So Allah, the hadith concludes with that. This is one question I have for all of you. Why does it conclude with that? Why does it conclude with, and their reckoning will be with Allah? Why say that? In the context of the hadith, why say that? It started off pretty intimidating, but now that we understand, okay, fine. Then it continued, okay, zakat, salah, all good. But then it goes into punishment, right? And that's going to be according to the deed. Fair enough. And your reckoning will be with Allah. Oh, thanks. Why? Is it possible that people will do stuff and get away with it? Yeah, all of that. So all of the in-betweens, the things that the cameras don't see, things that people don't hear, things that others are not present, all of that stuff. Always. So this is sort of like a default ending to when you're introducing Islam to anybody, or you're introducing or talking about the religion, is that, look, ultimately at the end of the day, Allah will account us all. You know, Allah will reward you for everything that you do, even when you think, oh my God, if only people knew how hard I worked today, how many hours I spent doing this thing. If people only knew and they could appreciate. So this is one of the things, one of the default responses. You listen, Allah keeps track of everything. Okay, so inshallah your reward will be with Him. Tayyib. No compulsion in the religion. Protection after clearly states that once an individual accepts Islam to perform prayer, pay zakat, their blood and their wealth are protected. The final phrase, their reckoning will be with Allah, highlights that Allah is alone that will judge the person's intentions and sincerity. And of course, this is the ayah that we mentioned earlier, no compulsion, la ikraha fi din. Islamic scholars universally affirm that the hadith does not contradict the Quranic principle. Forcing someone to accept Islam is considered a grievous sin. And the hadith's context of fighting is understood as a form of defense or resistance and not coercion, okay? There are verses like this in the Quran as well that are abused just as much. And I actually want to just, I actually want you to know about this ayah as well. The conclusion of Surah Al-Fath, Muhammadur Rasulullah, وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. Have you heard this ayah before? تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود. So at the end of Surah Al-Fath, the last verse is like a paragraph. But the only thing I will share with you is the beginning of that ayah. Muhammadur Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those that are with him, أشداء على الكفار, they are extremely strict and firm on the disbelievers. Now pause. Explain to me. The ones who are with the Prophet ﷺ, who are these people, by the way? The companions. Allah is saying the companions are extremely strict and firm with the disbeliever. Now this like literally goes the opposite way of everything that we just mentioned. You know, that Islam is a religion of peace, there's no coercion in Islam, and blah, blah, blah. Like, now this ayah says the Prophet and everybody who follows him are extremely firm and strict with the disbeliever. Shiddatun, shidda means that like you have no feelings. It's like somebody saying to you, oh my God, the kid's crying. Why don't you just give him a candy? Like, whatever, I don't care. That's why Allah invented tissues. He'll get over it. That's called shidda. Like you have no feeling, no remorse, no empathy, no care, nothing. The ayah is saying that the companions are like this with the disbeliever. Give me context. What is that talking about? What do you think it is? Perhaps maybe during a battle, okay? Anything else?
Disbelievers are like Abu Jahl, even though they know about the deen.
So very similar to the hadith then, where only those that are openly trying to intimidate, kill, punish, exterminate, expel, push you out, terrorize you, make your life the absolute worst because you're Muslim. That's what the ayah is referring to. It's not referring to your neighbor who invites you for their annual barbecue every year. It's not referring to your professors and your teachers and your bosses and your colleagues who are, extremely nice people. Right? It's referring to those that are constantly and openly threatening you because of your faith. That's who they're. So in other words, it's Quran's way of saying just stand firm, however you need to, and protect yourself and protect your family, but do it with one intention, one goal. I'm protecting myself, protecting my family, because ultimately I want to protect the deen. Okay? That mindset is something that, inshallah, we would talk about in more detail later on, perhaps maybe not even in this particular class, but just getting the mindset of being firm in the deen is an incredibly important subject, right? Hadith number 9. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عبد الرحمن ابن صخر رضي الله عنه قال. So after me, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول ما نهيتكم عنه فاجتنبوه وما أمرتكم به فأتوا منه ما استطعتم. Okay, pause. Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he mentions, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, what I have forbidden for you, avoid. What I have ordered you to do, do as much of it as you can. For indeed, verily, it was only their excessive questioning. Now pause before we go there. This intro of the hadith, here's a quick brief overview. Muslims must avoid whatever the Prophet ﷺ has forbidden and fulfill his commands to the best of their ability. Now here's a principle in usul, okay, in Islamic jurisprudence. This is a basic principle. The rulings in the Quran and the rulings from the Prophet are the exact same. So one cannot come and say, well, Allah says this and the Prophet's secondary. No. Whenever there is instruction or a ruling given from the Quran or from the Prophet ﷺ, the importance of these two rulings are equal. وَأَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. In Surah An-Nisa, Allah says, I sent down the book, meaning the Quran, and it doesn't say ثم الحكمة, then it's wisdom. And by the way, wisdom, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah said, wisdom in that ayah of Surah An-Nisa is the Sunnah, meaning it's the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. His Sunnah, another term or title to make reference to, is wisdom. Because the Sunnah, its goal, when we say it is to explain and illustrate how to practice the Quran, meaning it gives us the wisdom of the Quran, how to implement, when to do this, when not to do that, etc. So the point here is that when it comes to rulings, they both are equal. So if I tell you, can somebody give me an example first? A ruling that is found in the Sunnah, but not in the Quran. There are thousands. What is something that you can think of that is either halal or haram, but it's a hadith and not an ayah? Take a moment and just think for a moment. What could that be? So, think of something that we are ordered or discouraged or prohibited in the Sunnah, but there is no ayah or there is no ayah about that particular hadith. So, in Ramadan, i'tikaf is highly encouraged to be done where? In the three haramain, right? Al-Aqsa, Prophet ﷺ's masjid, and Mecca al-Mukarramah, right? Masjid al-Haram. The Prophet ﷺ says, there is no i'tikaf except in these three places, meaning you will not taste the true sweetness of i'tikaf unless you do it in these three places. There's no verse like this in the Quran. There is a verse about i'tikaf and some generic rulings, how to interact with your wife and what can be said, when does it start, when does it end. There are some rulings like that, but that's about it. So now, from this hadith, what you learn is that i'tikaf can be done anywhere, at any masjid. But if I really want to taste just how beautiful i'tikaf is, then my goal is to do it in one of these three haramain, sorry? So one of these three masjids. So if I really want to get the full blessing and the full reward, this hadith will tell me, but there isn't an ayah that will tell me to do that. Give me another example. Say it again. Taraweeh. Nothing in Quran about Taraweeh, but there is about Tahajjud, right? But again, general rulings here and there. So you see what happens is that a Quran may start a conversation on a subject and a hadith will complete it, or the other way around. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, did you ask that what's an obligation that's in the
Either.
Quran, or
Either. It could be an obligation or a prohibition that is found in the Sunnah, but there's nothing about it in the Quran, or there's nothing explicit about it in the Quran. And I'm telling you, you all know several of these examples, okay? But we just shared a couple of them. There are several of them like this, right? The hadith warns that excessive... Okay, this part of the hadith is really important, okay? Let's continue. فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ الَّذِينَ من قبلكم كثرة مسائلهم واختلافهم على أنبيائهم. Look what happened. So after you are given this principle of life, whatever is forbidden for you, avoid. Whatever you are ordered to do, do as much of it as you can. Now put that sentence aside for a moment. Indeed, it was only there. Who is there referring to? Who is this referring to? all of the previous nations before. So there, all of them. It was because of their excessive questioning. Explain to me what that means. Say it again? The story of the cow? Okay, fine. But what's the general message behind this excessive questioning? Is it referring to a specific thing? No. It's referring to a bad habit. So somebody who says, Yusuf alayhi salam, obviously he had his mother. He has a mother, but Quran doesn't mention anything. What's her name? Like, how old was she? Where's she from? What color was her hair? Are we allowed to have our hair like hers? I mean, she's Yusuf alayhi salam's mom. She must be super beautiful because it's Yusuf. Okay? Did Yusuf ever have braces? How come his teeth, was his teeth perfect too? How about his nose? Do we have anything about contours of his nose? Like these kinds of questions. On and on. When we talk about excessive questioning, it's not talking about numbers. Like I have 45 questions. That's fine. You can have 4,500 if you want. But if you have 45 questions and 43 of them about a person's facial features of somebody we know nothing about, that's excessive questioning. Meaning you're asking about things that have no purpose and no benefit to you. Like somebody will say, what's the language of Jannah? What have you always been told? Arabic. And everybody's like, oh, inshallah, subhanallah, Arabic. You speak Arabic? Oh, mashallah. So you already, how does Jannah taste right now? How does it feel? And really, the whole purpose or the whole wisdom behind that is, first and foremost, if it is that the language of Jannah is in Arabic, it doesn't matter. Like, how is that beneficial to you? I just want to go to Jannah. I don't care if it's in Chinese or it's in Russian or it's in English. You just want to be in there. You understand my point? And people are like, yeah, but okay, where should I learn like Jannah Arabic? Like Quran Arabic is one. I want to learn that kind of Arabic. Those are the kinds of questions. Silly questions with minute details about things we either know nothing of or very little, or even what we do know of is always questionable. We can't validate it. That's the excessive questioning that's being referred to in this hadith, and not somebody who is genuinely studying and questions arise and they just want to ask and ask and ask for the sake of learning. Not that student, because that student is a praiseworthy student. Okay, that's the student that us teachers love the most. Right, is we want that student to constantly be engaged and ask, just like Umar radiallahu anhu once said that al-as'ila is ilm, like asking questions is knowledge in and of itself, right? So here's what happens though. When they ask and they have this habit of excessive questioning, it led to a massive problem. Because it didn't have any purpose, and even if they had gotten the answer, it didn't increase their faith. It didn't bring them closer to Islam in any way. But instead, what it did do is that it caused them to start like disagreeing and arguing just back and forth. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يُجَادِلُ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. There are going to be people that Allah tells us in Surah Luqman, there are going to be people that are going to argue. Jadala, they're going back and forth. Yeah, but Allah says this. Yeah, but that's not the ayah. Yeah, but this is what the verse is. You understood it wrong. My sheikh told me this is what the hadith is. And what I like to refer to is like they're playing tennis with ayah and hadith, just back and forth to one another, right? And as a result, they started to disagree. And this disagreeing was not just restricted to the two of them, but it extended to the actual like history and theology of the religion with their prophets, leaders. So they started questioning when prophets were sent to them, Allah has ordered me that you must stop taking interest and abusing your power or authority or stealing or this or that. Allah has told me that this is all now wrong. And they'll be like, well, 1 or 2 extra kilos, nobody's going to be sitting there. My customers don't count that. This is what Shu'aib alayhi salam was sent for. He was sent to clean up all of the money problems that people were involved in. And what did Allah say? وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. So Allah cursed the people who that when customers came in and bought from him, they say, I want 10 kilos of rice. So the guy, the owner, puts 10 kilos, or at least it looks like it's 10 kilos, but it's actually 9.7. And he's like, what are they going to do? Count every grain of rice? Just charge them for 10 kilos. That's mutaffif. وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ. So if they give them kilos, كَالُوا أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ, or they give them a certain amount of weight, like something that's already been packaged, it says 10 pounds rice. But when you hold the bag, you think it's 10 pounds, but it's really less than that. أَوْ يُخْسِرُونَ. They're stingy and they're taking secretly and quietly. This is literally stealing. Even if, and this is one of the things you have to appreciate about our deen, subhanAllah, it does not leave any stone unturned. 1 grain of rice is enough for that entire transaction to be invalid. Because if you could control that, and even if a customer says, well, look, I just want this out. I don't, it already says exactly 10, but you took a grain of rice. Some of the ulama say, well, if it doesn't make a difference, then fine, but at least the customer is aware. But others were very strict, even down to 1 grain of rice. It has to be accounted for. So this is what the conclusion of the hadith refers to, is that this disagreement extended with even the prophets. What's our version of that, by the way? We don't have prophets here, so what's our version of that? Madhabs, or the imams, the shuyukh, our Islamic teachers. What kind of sheikh do you study with? I can't believe that sheikh said this was okay. Or he said that this week. Why is that sheikh so easy going? That kind of thing. And then they start arguing. Your sheikh said this is okay. My sheikh said, no, that's actually haram. And my sheikh studied from so-and-so and did this and did that and has more experience, more gray hairs, blah, 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 blah. And that all goes back to the end. Look, that as a result of their disagreeing, they destroyed the nations who were before you. They disagreed with their prophets. And then as a result, it destroyed everything. In other words, nobody could agree with anything anymore. So when you have ikhtilaf, when you have this disagreement that flourish more than agreeing, then nothing can prosper. Nothing can be successful. As long as you have that instability amongst the people, you can never keep them on a path where they can be or achieve some form of unity and respect. It's all lost. And I think, Allah knows best, just like the Prophet ﷺ says that, there will come a time that you will be discussed and talked about by the disbelievers as though they are all sitting at a massive table feasting on a huge meal. And, the companions asked, will we be powerful and great in number? Like, what would be our state when that happens? And Prophet ﷺ told them exactly what it is. You will be large in numbers, but you will be kal-ghuthath, like you'll just be like the foam of the ocean. In other words, you have one group that's just floating away in this corner, then the other group can't get along. So they said, we're going to open our own message and we'll float away here. Then there's a split there. So they decide, let's just split and we'll float our own separate. And you have this foam just scattered all over the place. It's really, subhanAllah, really something to just pause and how we were warned about all of this. We were told this stuff will happen if you do these things. And, as an ummah, I don't know if we really listened or not. Okay, let's pause there, insha'Allah ta'ala. And next week, because this is a fairly long hadith that I don't want to begin now. Next week we will take this hadith and then a couple more after that, insha'Allah ta'ala. Okay, guys? So we will pause here, bi'idhnillah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Anybody have any questions here? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
We have a question here.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Not completely. We're just wondering, changing your name after you get married. Is there anything Islamic about that?
No. No.
And like, are you sinful if you do change your name because it's not technically your father's name or your Libyan's name?